Future Commerce is brought to you by Octane AI. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to leverage more customer data and increase your revenue at your brand? The answer should be yes and yes. And with Octane AI, every Shopify and Shopify Plus merchant can do just that. Learn about your customers and collect buyer profile data with engaging quizzes and create personalized campaigns and flows using Facebook Messenger and SMS. Octane AI has plans for any sized business, and Future Commerce listeners get 10% off your first 6 months. So go sign up right now at octaneai.com/future. That's octaneai.com/future. This episode of Future Commerce is brought to you by Wix. That's right, Wix. The industry-leading content management platform is now also an industry-leading e-commerce platform with advanced online storefront features and over 700,000 active stores already selling worldwide. Find out if Wix is right for you by going to wix.com/e-commerce today. That's Wix, wix.com/e-commerce, or listen to the middle of the show to find out more about how they can transform your business. Future Commerce is brought to you by Blue Shift. 77% of consumers make brand choices based on personalized experiences. Here's my question. Are they choosing you? Well, Blue Shift allows e-commerce companies to move from batch and blast and one-size-fits-all experiences to something much more custom. You can find out more today about what Blue Shift does for your brand at blueshift.com/futurecommerce. That's blueshift.com/futurecommerce. Hello and welcome to Future Commerce, a podcast about the next generation of commerce. I'm Philip, and the next generation of commerce is sustainable. That's what we've been saying. And I think that's a loaded term these days. I want to know what it means to our next guest. Matt Bertulli, you and I go back ages. And in various parts of the world these days. You founded a company called Pela. And I want you to tell us a little bit about that and tell us who you are for people who may not be up to date on all the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I did not found Pela. I am the first investor in Pela.
Oh, okay.
So I met Jeremy years and years and years ago, and prior, he had no revenue, and it was like just an idea. So I started investing in the company and the idea, and eventually took over as CEO. But we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and I've only been involved for 5.
Okay.
Right. So his first 5 years was like pure R&D dude in a garage. But yeah, Pela is, how do I describe us? We design waste out of the human experience is sort of it. Like we're this like weird combination of commerce, we're direct to consumer, like classic D2C commerce business. We also do like a ton of investing in like material science and just figuring out how to get waste out of like everyday products.
Wow. There's so much that we could talk about today. We go back a little ways. Thanks for the correction there. It's so funny in the direct-to-consumer era. There's this conflation of, the founder-operator and direct-to-consumer Twitter, leader of thoughts that I think definitely happens. And so, and because so much of DTC is filled with what we entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs are, it's entrepreneurship in a prior era wasn't very sexy.
Right.
And it's very glamorized today. What were you doing before Pela?
Well, I mean, this is where you and I know each other from. So my first company I started was a company called DMAC Media. We were like super early days, at least in Canada, early days e-commerce agency. So we started out in the Magento world, like long before Shopify. I think actually like the first time I met Toby and Harley, like Shopify had, I want to say like 3,000 customers, like 2,000 customers. Most of them were Etsy sellers that had like 5 bars of soap for sale. So you and I go way back to my agency days. So I owned an agency prior to Pela that I sold DMAC to a company, private equity group that was doing a roll up, which is now known as Bounteous. And that was about 3 years ago.
I've just gone through an acquisition in the agency space because there's a lot of M&A. There's the roll up commerce specialization, especially amongst like digital agencies that have focused on like expertise in implementing or integrating commerce, is something that is needed for all kinds of traditional digital agency that doesn't have a commerce specialization. It's a very difficult space to build a team around, and you need specific skill sets. You need to be a man of particular acquired skills. You know?
I mean, like I started because I was a software developer by trade, right? So like Magento was a beast of a platform at the time.
Sure.
So like getting into that world, you definitely needed to be like super technical. Like Shopify and Shopify like software has made commerce so much more approachable now than it was like 15 years ago when I was going at it. Like that. It's like true. When I first got into it, everything was custom rolled, like everything.
That's right.
I think people forget how big of a leap forward Magento was, like compared to what else was out there in enterprise land, right? And then like Shopify was another big leap forward. So yeah, that was my past life, which is coming in like really handy now.
So let's talk about that. So you started out as an agency operator, right?
Yep.
With an engineering background in software engineering. Now you're sort of a practice group leader and sort of developing a specialized agency. You have an exit. You're an early investor in Pela, and they needed leadership, and so now you find yourself at a place to lead another company that's creating a platform as well, but a different kind. Tell me a little bit about Pela and how what sustainability. I know that's sort of a hollow term these days, but
sure.
When you're talking about reducing waste in the consumer's world, how did you test that in the market, or how does Pela sort of prove that out, and where are you going?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so like we started out with a compostable phone case. Like that was like when I invested in Pela, when I met Jeremy, I was super fascinated by the idea that that there were alternative materials out there to plastic. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I still claim that I don't know a whole lot about the science of it. I'm getting better. Like I have a material science team, and they're all PhDs and super smart people and all this shit. And it is like, it's fascinating stuff. So like sustainability to us is like one of our core values is community, right? And community to us is this definition of taking care of the whole. So like it's taking care of yourself, your team, your family, your local community, your regional community, your global community. So like we just have this belief that you should leave the campsite better than you found it, right? And I don't like to complicate that word a whole lot more. I think sustainability, like there's a whole bunch of greenwashing and all this other crap that comes as soon as you wade into those waters, particularly like if you're starting to touch energy or carbon or any of that bigger climate change stuff. We try to stay in our lane and like just really focus in on waste. Like the platform we're building now, we started out with a phone case, and now we made a totally new type of kitchen appliance hardware that like eats waste. That's what we do. It eats food, eats bioplastics. Like it's called Lomi. It's a slick little piece of technology, and we just think there's a way to rebuild consumerism in a lot of ways without waste. Like you can just design it out from the start, right? So like every single product to me should and could have a graceful end of life. That's the big idea. We're so far from that reality though. So like right now it looks like we sell a lot of phone cases and like watch straps and sunglasses and personal care products, like anything that we can go after that has plastic in it and that our science will apply. That's where we go play. But I have like very big ambitions in and around waste.
I heard this when we had Jack DeFuria from Parade on the show almost a year ago. And this is before the New York Times piece that everybody's like, oh, well, we've been talking about Parade. No. Sorry. Yeah. We've been talking about Parade since April of last year. And it's because the Yes, customer acquisition, they are doing interesting things. Yes, like they're doing a lot of interesting things. But the
Totally.
thing that if you ask Jack what it is that they do, he says in the way that Lululemon created a fabric platform
Yep.
for activewear, uh, Parade is creating a just-in-time customer manufacturing fabric
Yeah.
platform for intimates. And I think that that's a really interesting way to look at a business, is not just around customer acquisition or brand, but around, like, at its core, what are you innovating on? And you're innovating in product.
Yeah.
And from not just the products of here's a different kind of one way in, a consumer wedge to reduce waste, which phone cases seems like a really interesting way in.
Mhm.
But also, how do you then reduce other parts of waste? So how does Pela and Lomi sort of fit together in this like narrative? And how are you taking that to market with the customer?
Yeah.
And what are you hearing back from the customer as validation that they want and need this in their life?
Yeah. So I think about that a lot. So I think about, distribution, reach, like go-to-market positioning. Like I spend a lot of my time here. So, I mean, if you look at if you were to go to Pela's, Pela is the company, right? There's Pela, Pela Labs, whatever you want to call us. So Pela has a whole bunch of different products. So if you go, our site would be like Pela.earth. That's the main website if you want to learn more about us. So our first product was like mobile accessories, and then we built two other brands. So one is called Habitat, which we're actually rebranding very soon to Long Weekend, and the other is a brand called Sway, which is our eyewear brand. Now, Lomi is the product that we've actually been working on for 3 years. So while we've been building out these consumer goods, like call them simple consumer goods, right? Everyday products, we've been working on Lomi. That's our big R&D investment. It's like thousands and thousands of hours of work. And Lomi is the infrastructure that hooks it all together. So what we've learned, we're definitely a waste innovation platform. Like we're innovating on waste. That's what I care about. I think there's huge opportunity in waste. And Lomi is this key that unlocks this type of material science. Right. So globally, there's so many companies working in compostable plastics or biodegradables. There's tons of cool stuff out there. It lacks global scale because most people don't know this, but compostable plastics, they have nowhere to go right now. Recycling facilities don't want them. Compost facilities don't want them. Their economic models don't support them. If they go to landfill, that's not great. It's kind of like sending organic waste to landfill. It produces lots of methane. So they've got nowhere to go. And because of that, big companies don't like to adopt them. So Lomi, and the way that we're looking at Lomi and the way that we're looking at Pela as the greater whole is how do we enable lots of companies to make product like the Pela case? How do I make it easy for a Unilever or a Procter & Gamble to switch all their packaging over to compostables? Because the consumer can simply put that thing in Lomi along with their regular food waste, and it'll all turn back to dirt, right? So the big idea here is for Pela is how do we innovate on all parts, all the pieces of waste, right? From how a product is made to where it goes at the end. And Lomi is this big missing piece of the equation. How am I figuring out that people want this? We did you saw it, we did a crowdfund campaign in April of this year, May, and we pre-sold 20,000 units. And it was just like a rocket. It was so faster than we thought it would be. And then since then, usually what happens with crowdfund is you get all these early adopter, crowdfund bros that back everything super cool. They'll back it all. 80% of the people that backed our campaign were women. Oddly enough, we did really well in Minnesota.
Wow.
So middle American, everyday mom was the biggest consumer of Lomi, which is what we expected. We expected this to be the average person. People don't like waste. That was our thesis was nobody actually likes garbage. They've just never been offered an alternative to how to deal with it. Like all your e-commerce packaging, you hate it. I hate it.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I love Amazon, but I hate the cardboard that piles up in my garage.
Yep.
Or the plastic that comes in it. So like we pre-sold a ton of Lomis and we actually continue to. So like usually after a crowdfund campaign, things go down to zero. Like they pretty much stop until you ship the product. We continue to sell a ton of Lomis. And people are willing to wait 6 months, 7 months for them happily.
Why? Let me ask a few specific questions. So Lomi, it sits on your countertop. Paint a visual picture. Like it eats waste. How does it do that?
Yeah. So, if you're listening and you're familiar with the process of composting, it's just basically biodegradation, right? And like oxygen-rich environment biodegradation. So like landfills are oxygen-starved. I guess like most people would look at a landfill and say like, well, it's a big open pit. How could it possibly be oxygen starved? Well, like the way they run landfills is they layer them up. So when your food, for example, or any organic matter goes to a landfill, ultimately it gets buried and then it gets oxygen starved. And that process of degradation is called anaerobic, and it's what results in methane production. That's why landfills have that smell. That's not good for the planet, right? That's bad. So what Lomi's doing is, and what we've designed is technology that, like, there's a lot of sensors and software that runs Lomi, where it's mimicking compost. Compostic is aerobic. Like it uses and wants oxygen, right? It uses heat. It uses abrasion. We just even designed custom bacteria that goes in Lomi when you load in your food. So you put your food in, you put in one of our little, custom bacteria pods, and it's got one button on it. So it's dumb, it's stupid easy to use. Like you literally just press the button and it starts. And then you go to bed, the same way that you would probably start. Like the way I described it is like, it's just like a dishwasher.
Like a dishwasher. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You load it after dinner and you start it, like you unload it the next day. And Lomi is the same way. You throw in your food, whatever else is Lomi compatible, start it, go to bed. The next day you have what is going to look like to everybody, which is just dirt, right? It's got like 40 to 50% humidity, feels like dirt. You can throw it in your garden, you can sprinkle it on your lawn, toss it in the planter. I mean, you could throw it in the garbage. Like if you really had to, you could throw it in the garbage.
Hey, Philip here to tell you about our newest sponsor, Octane AI. If you are on Shopify or Shopify Plus, and who isn't, am I right? Then you need what Octane AI has to offer. I am a huge fan of guided selling, and Octane AI has tools that allow you to get to know your customers on a deeper level and collect more buyer profile data. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you can use things like shop quizzes, Facebook Messenger, SMS, and opt-in tools to allow you to engage your customer more personally so you can get on their level. More personalized campaigns and flows across all channel means more ROI. And that ROI that is driven from Octane AI is usable in other platforms with their integrations to other tools you're already using. Brands have already seen incredible results. Up to 16x increase in email signups and a 28% increase in AOV. That's average order value, money in your pocket. What are you waiting for? Octane AI has plans for any sized business, and Future Commerce listeners get 10% off the first 6 months when you sign up. So why don't you sign up today? Go to octaneai.com/future. Once again, that's octaneai.com/future, and tell them Philip sent you. I'm a big fan of using the right tool for the right job. And I'm an even bigger fan of piloting and proving out a capability for your business before you go and throw a ton of money at it. And that's why I am a fan of our newest sponsor at Future Commerce, Wix e-commerce. Wix, the industry-leading content management platform, is now also a growing global e-commerce platform with advanced online storefront features. Solo creators, merch stores, limited releases, micro e-com sites, and oh so much more can be launched in under a day on Wix. Wix e-commerce lets you take control of your customer base and build repeat sales channels with integrated CRM and loyalty tools. Wix might be the right tool for the right job for an entrepreneur, an omnichannel retailer, a brand to get up and run and launch and scale their online stores successfully. Why don't you give it a try? What have you got to lose? Go to wix.com/e-commerce today and join over 700,000 active stores already selling worldwide with Wix e-commerce. That's Wix, Wix.com/e-commerce. It's time once again for me to tell you about our newest partner, Blue Shift. Channel centric, siloed, batch and blast, one size fits all. These are the words no marketer likes to use and no campaign that your customers want to be a part of. So why do these campaigns still happen? Why? Well, disconnected data and disjointed technology. Blue Shift's Smart Hub CDP connects data and creates personalized omni-channel experiences for leading brands like James Allen and CarParts.com. Blue Shift provides catalogs for AI-driven product recommendations, advanced predictive segmentation capabilities, and creates custom audiences for your first-party data to leverage across almost any media platform so that you, the marketer, can make batch and blast a thing of the past. Learn more at blueshift.com/futurecommerce and get your copy of the Smart Guide to Product Recommendations for e-commerce and retail for free. That's right. Go to blueshift.com/futurecommerce. There's so many people who I believe, if they're like me, let me impose my own bias here, but the way that I've been introduced into composting is through community initiatives, right?
Totally.
So community programs.
Yep.
How do we break that? Like, is Lomi the way that we create the consumer demand for it instead of a government or city?
Yeah, instead of like hub and spoke.
Yeah,
that's definitely the big idea. Is like distributed waste management was where this all came from. Was Tesla figured it out with infrastructure for charging cars. Like the big argument against electric cars, at least when I was younger, was there's too many gas stations. Like nobody's going to buy these. There's too many gas stations.
Sure.
Like it's just inconvenient, and then Tesla started building out tons of his own charging stations, but then also, so easy to put a charger in your home. So easy, right? Like, and tons of electricians can do that. Mm-hmm. So that was where the idea for Lomi came from, was how do we make this bottom up led? Like, how do you make innovation and waste be driven from the consumer and consumer demand and consumer interest? And instead of like government driven. So like most green bin programs would be like the common thing that's rolling out in different parts of the USA, here in Canada too. Even those green bins, like people don't like those. They stink. They're gross. Right. Like that's not a pleasant experience at all.
It's more sorting than anything else. It's just this goes there. There's no intentionality of like how it works, right? Like right.
You're not invested in it at all. Like,
no,
the people put that thing under their sink and they hope to never actually have to touch it, except they do have to touch it because like it starts to stink the whole house up, and you don't want to touch it. It's like it's this really bad part of your life. So, I think the way that we envision Lomi kind of working is like if you put one of these in every home in America, and you had cities that did have organic waste pickup, what comes out of Lomi can easily go in that curbside green bin or green box. Compost facilities will happily take that kind of input. That's dirt. They love that stuff, right? They'll throw it in their piles, they'll turn it in, they'll sell it. The nice thing is if every home had a Lomi, 80% of their food waste that would otherwise be picked up by a truck, 80% of that volume would be reduced. So now not only are you diverting food waste from landfill, right, in the places that there isn't green bin, now you're reducing the weight and volume of all of that food waste by up to 80%. And that to me, then that means like less trucking is required, right? Less destination processing. So like your carbon footprint for all waste management just drops dramatically, right? And that's like the really big idea here is make it so easy on the consumer that they'll do it. Like it's just convenient, instead of asking the consumer to do extra work, which is what recycling kind of is. And that's why recycling sort of sucks, and why it doesn't work.
Well, yeah. And what you're talking about sounds like the emergence of a brand new category. It's category innovation, in that you're creating
100%.
right.
Yeah.
And so doesn't that lend itself to be more of a venture scale business, to say Lomi in every home, industrial versions of Lomi, commercial
we
uses,
are venture backed, right? Like we absolutely are. And I think that's I try not to venture it. Like I try personally to stay out of like a lot of D2C conversations. Cause like people ask, like I'll get asked questions like, hey, you're a D2C company, how many employees do you have? I'm like, well, it's really tough, man. Cause like I've got 60 some employees, but if this was just a D2C company, I'd have 20.
Right.
Like I wouldn't have a material science team. I wouldn't have like a massive product development R&D team. We have in-house manufacturing and in-house customer service. Like we have a lot of stuff in-house that if we were just a D2C company, you probably shouldn't do.
Sure.
Right. So I think, we're venture backed for that reason. Like the idea that we can put a Lomi in every house, that's expensive, and the speed that we're going at is like, it's shocking. And it's just, like there's so many parts of making hardware too that are like just mind-blowingly expensive.
Oh yeah.
To bootstrap this would be awful.
So it's so interesting because from the outside looking in, I'm just, playing the surrogate for the listener of my perceptions of what Lomi or Pela might be. Pela, oh, you're a phone case company. Well, no, it's bigger than that. Lomi, oh, it's a compost bin. And no, it's actually bigger than that.
Yeah.
So I guess, does the crowdfunding strategy for the product launch sort of undermine the sort of aspiration of what the consumer might see you as, or does that not matter? Is it a great marketing validation model for you to say we're heading in the right direction more than anything else? You're not customer debt financing necessarily. You don't necessarily need it, right?
No, our access to capital so far has been great. Like our investment partners are awesome. I couldn't ask for better. Like they're really, really good. And it was more about, let's really test this in the market. Like let's, we've spent years working on this thing. Let's come up with like a half decent, shitty first draft on like, what would a launch campaign look like? And let's try that as a crowdfund. Nice thing is that one of my partners here, Gareth, he's done like 3 or 4 big crowdfunding campaigns himself in other businesses. Right. So like we knew that playbook as well. So we put the campaign together and, number one priority was, let's give this a very meaningful market test to a cohort of customers that are going to be okay waiting to get this, like waiting 7 months to get this. Right. We waited to pull the crowdfunding campaign off until we were super far along in manufacturing.
Yeah.
So that's like an example. We're definitely not customer financed in that regard. Like I'd already spent millions of dollars developing this thing, so when we hit Indiegogo, that was like one of our big messages to people was like, look, we're not 2 guys in a garage. This isn't a pipe dream. Like we have supply chain. I have 5 people full time on the ground in Hong Kong making this thing. Like they're on my team. They're not outsourced. Like those are my employees. So crowdfunding was like a great way to validate. It was also a super public way to launch and like claim the category and like just, it's a great way to build investor confidence. It was great for our team, like we're not a huge company, but we're still big enough that not everybody sees everything every day. So like by going super public, our own team was like, the first 48 hours was hilarious watching them all like refresh the campaign to see that like, wait, we sold $1 million in an hour. And like people here were freaking out in the office. It just had a whole bunch of wins, man. Like I would do it over again. Like, I don't think there was any downside to doing it that way.
Wow. Big congratulations to what you've done. I think you, in the last 6 months in particular, and I've watched the sort of reorientation of the way that people talk about Pela, which is less about Matt being a brilliant leader or operator or cares a whole lot about, this one topic around sustainability, but more as how do we see Pela and its family of brands as a platform for innovation, and
Right.
And that is very hard to execute, and takes a lot of discipline for years and years to be sort of misconstrued as a phone case company, right?
Totally.
And that I how satisfying is that for you to sort of watch? I don't know if you're like me. If you're like me, then you like I crave validation from my peers that I'm heading in the right direction, and I want them to be speaking my language, right?
Sure.
Is that satisfying at all for you, or are you just tuned out to that?
No, okay. So like, what's super satisfying to me is, so you mentioned this idea of like category design earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like one of the core things with category design, as I understand it, is like creating your own vernacular, right? So like you create a way that people should speak about your business and your product. And then what's super satisfying to me is to actually see people echo that back. So like Pela's got, call it like, I think about 1 million consumers, and they're loud. They're pretty passionate about the whole topic of waste and waste-free living. It's really cool to see that echoed back, like your vernacular, like how you talk, be echoed back to you, and then like how they share it with their friends and family. It's extra cool to see like my own peers. Lomi definitely broke a whole new level of like awareness for Pela, like for sure. And that was the intention, was like do a massive launch, show people we're way more than a phone case company. It's been super cool to see it all start to like come together. And I think when people really see what we're up to, it's gonna blow some minds, right? So it definitely, like, I'm not in it for the validation, but any human being, it's really nice to see some stuff that you dream up come to life. Like, I'd be lying if that didn't feel good. Especially like, internally, like it's really nice to see. Like we've got a few employees that have been here for like, 3-4 years, and like they were like the first 5 or 6 people. It's super cool to see their work like finally hit it, and then they get to see, like they get that validation, right? It's a lot of fun. I honestly, man, like I think it would be great if more entrepreneurs, especially in D2C, started looking at innovation as a legit competitive advantage, right? Like this is a place that, yes, it's risky. Like it's way more risky than just sourcing stuff.
Of course.
But if you're trying to build like real value, I think it's the way to go, but honestly, like my other business partner, Brad, his world, he came out of toys, right? In the toy world, you don't stop innovating ever. Like he would release like 20 products a year to find 2 or 3 winners. It was basically venture capital with kids, So to have it's his experience and his discipline that kind of added that to this company. And I would be lying if I didn't say that, like, I probably fought that pretty aggressively for the first couple of years. Like I didn't get it. Now I fully get it. I see why you constantly have to be like, trying to burn your own house down. Like, that's it. It's like, how can I burn the house down and rebuild it, and before somebody else burns it down for me? And
wow. There's a show title, if I ever heard one. There's giving you the last word, because I certainly don't want to pontificate at the end. I couldn't be prouder to say that, you and I had come toe to toe on stuff for the past 10 years. Watching you succeed in this way gives me such joy. It's kind of an incredible thing to watch people who come from far-flung places in the early stages of e-commerce and the Magento community succeed in different ways, to see how all of our values have come back to alignment around building what's next in the world of e-commerce. And I think maybe if you could give me like a little bit of your thoughts on what's next for the industry as a whole. Is this the glory days and we don't know it, or are we right here at the beginning?
Oh, you're at day zero. You're 100% at day zero. I really think that Harley and Toby over at Shopify and everybody at like their team, I look at the way they speak. I think Toby is probably the smartest man alive. Like, he's got to be. The guy like just emits an energy that when he talks, you're like, you're definitely the smartest dude. Like, you have to be, like not Elon, it's Toby. I look at them for signals when it comes to commerce, and I really do believe that this is day zero. I think we're just getting started. I think we haven't even begun to scratch in areas of innovation. I tweeted this the other day. Like, I think every entrepreneur is going to be a climate entrepreneur, 100%. And I think that D2C is the best place for that to happen, because like making physical things, these are things that people interact with every day. People do not interact with carbon or greenhouse gases every day.
Mm-hmm.
They interact with consumables and consumer goods and like their clothing. And that's just one example, man. Like, just the client, like there's so many problem sets that I believe that e-commerce and D2C intersect with, right? That this is the point of intersection for major innovation in how we live and how we experience, like the whole, I call it the human experience. I think it's changing. And I think D2C is at the intersection point for that. Yeah. I just, that's a belief.
There's the last word, Matt. What a ride. I know you're right at the beginning too. Congrats on launching Lomi. It's kind of an incredible thing to watch from the outside. We're rooting for you. And if there's anyone that's building the future of commerce, I'd say it's you all. You embody a lot of what we believe, the next generation of entrepreneur and business and category innovation should look like. And it's a pleasure to have had you on the show. Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude, this has been fun. I'm happy we got to do this. This is great. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to Future Commerce. See you next time.